For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. Last Sunday, Prime Minister Modi laid the foundation of a significant project in Vadodara, or Baroda as it is more popularly known in Gujarat, trying to bring in a revolution in the Make in India concept for the defense sector in India. What are the implications of the C-295 project of manufacturing transport aircraft for the Indian Air Force in India by the joint consortium of Airbus and the Tata Advanced Systems Ltd, which will be the local partner for the Airbus company, which is a well-known company, is the topic of this week's Ask Nitin. I am Nitin Gokhale. So, the C-295 project for manufacturing 56 or supplying 56 transport aircraft, the C-295 transport aircraft to the Indian Air Force, was first mooted way back in 2011 when the Air Force was aware that its fleet of Avro transport aircrafts were reaching the end of their life and they needed to be replaced by more modern and more agile transport aircraft for a variety of tasks that the Air Force has in India and abroad. And the search began way back, in fact, before 2011. And in 2011, it was decided that the Airbus consortium's C-295 is the best suited, best cost aircraft for the Indian Air Force. The Tatas were roped in. In fact, that was the model that was looked at. But the proposal didn't go anywhere because the Ministry of Defense officials, as well as some of the skeptics in the Indian Air Force, were not sure how this would pan out in terms of the components of Make in India and the projections that were made by the consortium of the Tatas and the Airbus. So, and of course, there were political reasons for it. Where would this project be situated? Where would the money come from? And how would the regulators and auditors would react to a completely new model of acquisition for the Indian Air Force. For whatever reasons, the file kept pending for so many years, and until 2021, when the Indian government finally decided that it needs to push and get this rolling, the project was going nowhere. But it was in 2021 that the government decided that the 3 billion worth of, and the 3 billion cost was worth making or worth spending for acquiring 56 transport aircraft of the C-295 variety. That's how the contract was signed in 2021. And the pricing seemed a throwaway price really, a decade after it was initially discovered. So, it was immediately lapped up by the Air Force with the support of the National Security Council Secretariat and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who persuaded the Indian decision makers in the Ministry of Defense as well as in the Prime Minister's office to go for this project. This project seemed completely doable and beneficial to India in more than one way. Not just that the aircraft were coming into the Indian Air Force, which was badly needed anyway, as a replacement for the old warhorse Avros. But more than that, the model on which this project was conceived is something that is going to be a template for defense manufacturing going forward. And let me sort of give you the highlights of what this model entails. So, as I mentioned, this is a $3 billion worth of contract that the Airbus and the Tatas have won. It's the first private sector plant which would be now set up in Vadodara, in which the Prime Minister has laid the foundation for that project, to make military aircraft in India. In the past, say 30 or 40 years, If we have to look for a similar product or a similar situation, then we have to go back to the mid 60s and the late 60s, when the Marut aircraft was manufactured by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited as one of the airplanes to be made in India. Very early airplanes which the Air Force was happy with at that point in time. But it didn't go anywhere for a variety of reasons. You can sort of read it up. There's no time to go into all those details. But remember, that was the government-owned entity or public sector-owned entity, the HAL, was doing it. The significance here is that this is the first time a private entity, a consortium nevertheless, of the Airbus and Tatas is going to do the manufacture of the military aircraft. According to the contract, the first 16 aircraft of the 56 will be delivered by the Airbus from its facilities in Spain in a flyaway conditions, and the next 40 would be done in India or manufactured in India. Of course, the design remains the original design of the Airbus, but rest of it, the manufacturing of the 40 aircraft will happen in India over the next 10 years, which means on an average 10 aircraft will be manufactured by the new facility coming up near Vadodara for C-295. Of course, some of those 40 aircraft will be again based on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down assemblies to be imported from abroad, from Spain perhaps, and assembled here in India. But at least the next 30 will be completely manufactured in India, which will involve many MSMEs, many tier 1 suppliers to the Tatas and the Airbus consortium, which will then sort of come up around that facility and across the country. They will supply various parts. In fact, according to one estimate, more than 13,400 parts of the aircraft and 4,600 sub-assemblies will be manufactured, will be made by Indian MSMEs for the benefit of the C-295 being manufactured in India. Now that's a huge number. Of course, the aircraft, any aircraft has so many of those sub-assemblies and parts, but to make them in India fully and then supply it to the company, the Tatas and the Airbus, for a military aircraft is a first for Indian MSMEs. So far, some of the Indian MSMEs have been supplying fuselage for the Apache helicopter. The empennage for some of the Boeing aircraft are being made in some companies in India or some MSMEs in India. And aerostructures for Chinook helicopter, which India has also bought from the US, are also being made off late in the past 4 or 5 years in India. So the initiation of India or Indian MSMEs becoming part of the global supply chains, either in Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Raytheon or MBDA, has already started. But this project of C-295 being manufactured in India will give it a further boost and a major boost to Indian MSMEs. That's the importance of this. Further, the Indian-owned or Indian government-owned or partly owned enterprises like Bharat Electronics Limited and other entities in the public sector will also be supplying electronic suits, the defense electronics for the aircraft. That is going to be a more modern version of a transport aircraft for the Indian Air Force. And therefore, what is going to happen is more than 125 MSME companies in India will become permanent suppliers of the entire supply chain in the C-295 production. Now that is a huge number because this will also give them expertise, it will give them the necessary certification, this will also give them the experience of manufacturing very precise sub-assemblies and components for taking it a step further for global manufacturing whenever required or at competitive prices when other aircraft manufacturers need their skills and their expertise and their manufacturing abilities. This is what it will do for the Indian MSME sector. The additional advantage or sort of spin-off of this project is also that an MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul facility, will be established in the same vicinity, which will mean that there are about 40 odd countries across the world who are using the C-295 or its different versions for transportation in the air forces across the world. Now they need MRO facilities, they need overhaul, they need engine replacements, they need maintenance. Now all that can also happen in India beyond just the manufacturing of the 30 odd or 40 odd C-295s that will be made in India. This will mean that one, of course, there is an income. There is also the possibility of C-295s being made by this joint venture for exports to other countries. But apart from the exports of the finished product or the platform, that is C-295 aircraft, the expertise that the Indian companies or the Indian MRO will acquire will also mean that there will be foreign exchange earnings when other countries send their aircraft for maintenance, repair and overhaul or engine replacements, whatever you want to do it in that sector or that segment. So which means you are creating expertise, you are creating a foreign exchange earning vertical, and you are also earning a reputation for becoming an aerospace and defense hub for the world rather than just the Indian Air Force or the Indian Armed Forces. So these are some of the positive spin-offs that are going to happen as far as this project is concerned, and that's why I said this is a real make in India. With India's emphasis on atmanirbharta or self-reliance in defense, already the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has its order books full on the helicopter vertical. In the helicopter vertical, all their order books for the next 10 years are full. They haven't done too well so far on the fighter jet program, but the LCA Mark 1 and then LCA Mark 2, which is on the drawing board and which will start flying its first flight around 2025, will mean that the HAL has got its hands full. But again, an ecosystem is being created there. And if the advanced medium combat aircraft comes up as planned by 2035 and beyond, with engines from elsewhere, and then if other companies, bigger companies in India also start looking to manufacture jet engines as, of course, with technology from outside. But if they start looking at that, then India will have a very robust aerospace and defense sector in the next 15 years or so, which will mean that there will be many more jobs created, many more expertise will reside in India, and India will be a chosen destination for many of the Europeans and African and South Asian countries for, as I said, for repairs, maintenance and overall. So therefore, this one project is going to give a boost to multiple points in the Indian defense sector. And as India sort of buys more and more equipment for its armed forces, remember India's defense budget compared to China or to US is modest comparatively, but it's nevertheless a significant budget at $50 billion. The defense budget really or more gives the scope for India being a destination of choice, and with the Indian government, with the Prime Minister emphasizing that India's defense exports must reach $5 billion by the end of 2025 and beyond, of course, there is no limit to the ambition that Indian companies can have, either the Indian majors or the Indian MSMEs involved in the Indian defense sector. So that's the spin-off of the C-295 project, or C-295, the facility that is coming up in Vadodara in Gujarat. And of course, the fallout and the positive impetus that this project will give to the Indian defense sector. That's what I wanted to flag as far as the significance of C-295 for the Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian defense sector was concerned. As usual, we have a variety of questions, but I have a special guest joining us from Singapore. Rohan Bhade, please introduce yourself and please ask your question, and I'm happy to answer your queries, even if there are more than one query. So please go ahead and shoot.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Gokhale, thank you very, very much for having me on this program. Your introduction actually answered one of my questions. So, to start with me, my name is Rohan Bade. I am presently based in Singapore. I'm a marine project manager. Uh, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a great initiative, and sure, there are implications, positive implications for the nation. The first part of my question is given the amount of MSMEs and the ecosystem that this project success relies on, do you think that the government should have started off with a smaller project because everybody's eyes are going to be on this? There are numerous people within our own country wanting this to fail and then tag the government as being a little over ambitious or biting more than they can chew. So that's actually my first question. Like,
First question.
could we have gone
I
with a
will. Yes, no, it's a very relevant question, and also I think it's a very pertinent question in that sense, because there is always a doubt whether a country like India, which hasn't had too many successes in defense manufacturing or too many examples of or expertise in defense manufacturing, can it deliver the high standards required for such a project? That question has been at the back of most people's minds. But what the consortium has done and what the government has done is that they have scanned the expertise available in India. They have looked at the kind of skills or the scale that some of the MSMEs have. And fortunately, over the past 7-8 years, since 2015, when the Make in India concept started, many companies which will give or supply crucial assemblies and subcomponents and sub-assemblies have come up to the required world standards. Of course, it's going to be a learning process, as I said, and as you rightly pointed out, that it is going to be an uphill task. But the government's thinking is, and the logic is that you have to start somewhere, because without starting, you will not know what is going to be your pain points, what are you going to be your pain points, what are you going to be failure rates, all that you will not know. And therefore, it's best to start as early as possible. So, the consortium, and as we know, and the Tatas are a leading industrial house, not just in defense, they are trying to come in, but in other sectors. And they know exactly how to maneuver this, how to absorb the mistakes and how to go forward. So I think on that count, we should give them time, and we should be confident about their abilities, is what I would think. But certainly, maybe 2 years down the line, if we speak again about this project, and maybe I'll visit it and see it if they permit, then of course we'll have more answers to that. But I must compliment you on looking ahead rather than just go sort of getting swept up, if I can use that term, in the euphoria that has been created by the C-295 project. But go ahead with your second question, Rohan.
Absolutely, that's a great clarification because in the Indian news circles, I think the whole politics of Maharashtra versus Gujarat took center stage, and the actual implications of how it affects the person on the street is overlooked. The second part of my question is linked to the first one is what does it do to the, and I'm taking a liberty here, what does it do to the complacency or the monopoly of HAL going forward? You mentioned the order books are full, but does it have scope to be a little more agile? Are there scope for maybe Boeing to come in and manufacture another aircraft? And looking even further, can civilian aircraft manufacturing be set up as a result of the success of this project?
Again, a very pertinent point you're making, and I'll take the last part of your question, the second question, about civilian aircraft. Now, that's something which I didn't deliberately mention, since we are speaking mainly about the defense segment or the defense sector. But one of the spin-offs that has been anticipated by both Airbus as well as the government and the Tatas is the huge demand that Indian civil aviation sector is going to have in terms of aircraft for its growing passenger requirements or the growing traffic in civil aviation sector. And you'll require more and more aircraft to come in. And what better way, or what better inexpensive way to have more aircraft being manufactured in India than sort of going and buying them on wet lease or on lease from elsewhere across the world. So that's something that they have already thought about. But your main component about the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, I did mention that their order books on the rotary wing verticals are full. LCA is also there. They're likely to deliver, or they have to deliver, about 300 all odd light combat aircraft in different versions, both for the naval and the Indian Air Force requirements. But yes, they can certainly now become a little more agile. They should become more agile, because it is no longer that old monopoly where you got your order books full by nomination by the armed forces, Indian armed forces. The government has made it very clear it's going to be level playing field, and you have to deliver and deliver good quality product, or the best quality product. So I think they'll have to gear up, and from what I hear, and after talking to many of the old hands in HAL, that this is one of the key result areas that the HAL management is looking at, of becoming a better quality company, a better quality to be delivered, and also looking at not losing out on the AMCA project, because there is all likelihood, if they don't have competitive pricing and better expertise, the AMC, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, can be manufactured by any other manufacturer in the world. And in this context, the Air Force is looking at buying 110 more, if not 110 more, maybe 75 odd, 80 odd, the MRFA as they call it now. It's not MMRCA 2.0 anymore. It's MRFA, the multi-role fighter aircraft. Whether single engine, double engine, one doesn't know. But the Air Force is really pressing hard or impressing upon the government that it needs more aircraft in its fighter kitty. And again, that the contract is going to go the C-295 way, and therefore C-295 model or the template is extremely important. That anybody who wants to supply to India has to have a joint venture, or what was used to be called during Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar's time, the strategic partnership project, where you have a OEM or original equipment manufacturer and a local partner to do a manufacturing hub for strategic platforms, or not just strategic platforms but major platforms. So I am very hopeful that HAL will get benefit, where it will be benefiting from the increased competition. It will have to rise to the occasion, otherwise they will be left behind. And therefore, it's one way competition is always good, as we know. Otherwise, complacency becomes the bane of the quality. Good becomes the enemy of the great, as they say in the corporate sector. It applies to both the HAL as well as to the Indian Air Force, I suppose. So that's where we stand as far as your other query is concerned. I can take one more question and then wind up from here, if Rohan, if you have any more questions.
Sure. Well, it's a two-part question, but feel free to answer what you feel is appropriate. There's a skills component, and to set up manufacturing hub, the local population needs to be skilled appropriately, and there needs to be adequate supply of labor to sustain these programs. So is the government doing something very specific to raise awareness to the youth that these are the skills you need to acquire, or these are the specialized skills you need to acquire? So we can supply these, because these are not, although there is automation is a key component here, the assembly line will largely be driven by human beings. And the last small bit is, what is the strategic significance of this aircraft to the Indian Armed Forces, given the situation around our borders and the fact that we have a bigger transport aircraft called the Globemaster? Thank you.
Oh, well, the second part is easier to answer because that's my domain. The strategic significance of this aircraft is that one, you're sort of replacing the old Avro fleet with a more modern and aircraft that can last another 4 decades, if not more. But more than that, India's airlift requirements are going to increase as we take on the China challenge going further in the next 20 years. And most of the airlift capability has to be in the Himalayas, or the foothills of Himalayas, as we've seen in 2020, 2021. And therefore, any new aircraft will only boost India's airlift capability, which will further enhance the logistics chain as far as Army and Air Force both are concerned, and also allow the movement or the switching of forces from one sector to the other, whether it's eastern sector or the northern sector, as far as China is concerned. Now, if Pakistan also starts behaving oddly or provocatively, then we have to switch forces from the northern borders to the western borders. So that aircraft will add to Indian Air Force's capability and ability to switch forces, to speed up the logistics supply chain when it comes to the crunch, and of course make sure that the availability of different type of aircraft means that you're not dependent on one type of aircraft or one type of aircraft which will be then squeezed by some other in terms of time and space, will be squeezed by the original equipment manufacturer when it comes to supplying of replacement parts or repairs and overhaul. So that's the significance as far as the strategic aspect is concerned. But as far as skilling and the awareness about the requirement in a high technology aircraft manufacturing, and this is just one step in that. But if India has to have manufacturing ability for fighter aircraft going forward, then you will require much more strength or much more capacity in acquired skills which are suitable for aircraft manufacturing. Now, in that respect, I think government has been slightly slow. Government has been not aware that this has to be done. But now that the project has come there, I think the ITIs and the special skilling program that the government does have will get a further boost or will be used to skill some of the youth in this, and of course change the mindset that it is not the degree that matters, it is the skill that matters, because a degree on paper is no good if the skills are not there. And I think that realization the government has, some of the departments in the government have, that needs to be now taken down to the people, to those who will be actually willing to work. There's no dearth of what I call street smartness or native skills amongst Indians. As we know, we are jugadus in North India. They all say, jugad is the best solution for many of these problems that we face. But that is not enough. And I'm actually grateful to you for asking that right question. I think that's where India will have to pull up its socks, India and the private sector, the government and the private sector, to bring in those skills going forward. Rohan?
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking all the questions.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for joining, and thank you for being a very regular feedback giver and a regular viewer and regular commentator as far as our programs are concerned. Thank you very much. We'll have more occasions to have these discussions going further. Thanks, Rohan. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
So, as you can see, that there are viewers who are discerning, those who have many questions, those who are studying the problems or studying the particular aspects of defense and defense manufacturing in depth. So, I was very pleased to sort of do this discussion. I would urge many of you who watch this program to send us your queries, send us your requests, send us your comments, so that we can take you on this program like Rohan joined from Singapore. I would like more and more people joining this program, make it a longer program if necessary. We are willing to do that. So you know where to subscribe to our social media handles and our YouTube channel. If you're already a subscriber, do spread the word amongst your friends, family and acquaintances, as I keep saying at the end of every program, because that will give us much more widespread comments from the people who watch this program, and give us an idea of what we should do more to make this program informative as well as educative. For the time being, that's all I have. It's goodbye.